Welcome to the Flore, fantasy and sci-fi lore. We are returning to Dune again. This is a remastered episode of the original released when the movie came out a few years ago. We have cleaned up the audio. I have pulled out the old intro and are releasing this here. This episode is about harmonics and structural resonance. A lot of Frank Herbert's sci-fi was very soft, but there are certain pieces that are built on real physics, and we're going to be diving into that in this episode. So if you want to learn more about Dune, the Bene Gesserit, and harmonics and their bigger role in the Dune story, this is the episode for you. Roll the intro.
Do you remember the first story that was so spellbinding it drove you to break the rules and stay up all night to keep reading, keep watching, keep playing? So good, you forgot your life and lived there?
So good. The moment it ended, you asked yourself, what next?
Welcome to the Flore. Our goal is to take you back, take you deeper, to explore and understand more, and relive that childlike wonder.
Join us as we dive deep into humanity's greatest stories, no matter how they are told, through books, movies, television, even games.
One of us does an in-depth research on the topic. One of us is familiar with the topic.
And one of us knows nothing. So the right questions will always be asked and addressed for anyone coming into the topic, regardless of how much you know.
Enjoy another world, another adventure, another spellbinding story. Join us on the Flore.
Welcome back to another episode of The Flore, where we talk about Dune and the one true religion, the Bene Gesserit, and why you should be a part of it. Okay, so this is actually going to be a two-part episode. If you didn't understand what that was, go check out our first episode. And we're just going to review real quick what we talked about there if you don't want to. Dune was originally released in 1965 by a man named Frank Herbert, who actually started writing about Dune when he was researching dunes in Oregon.
Sand dunes, yeah.
Which just is very interesting. He's like, oh, look, sand dunes. Let's write a huge book about it. And he didn't actually become famous until his third book came out, correct?
Well, it was slowly building, but when the third book came out, that's when he was a huge success.
But the first book is the biggest one. So the third book was Children of Dune, and it was released in 1976, which was almost 11 years after the first book. But what's interesting is the first book is where like the cult classic comes from, where everyone loves it, from what I understood from our last episode. And there's a lot of mixed emotions for the other two books. And then in it, we talked about... He talks a lot about exploring religion and society, and the Bene Gesserit was a huge role in that. And they're a constructed religion network to stay in power. So basically, they craft their own mythologies, and if someone doesn't agree with them, they'll just create a messiah or a religion that completely contradicts them. So the people that are like, oh, we don't like the Bene Gesserit, then that way they can still be in control because they just have someone go down there and be like, oh, me neither. Read this book. And then we also talked about super babies, correct? Which I don't remember. Basically something about, I don't remember. Give me
Okay,
I just wrote down super babies.
So in Dune, there is a specific drug called melange, which they usually just refer to as the spice. And it allows you to see a little bit into the future. And so the Bene Gesserit for thousands of years have been genetically engineering children through just marriages and everything to create someone who can not just see a little bit into the future with the spice, but can see far into the future with the spice.
And then with that, you had mentioned that men and women react differently to spice, right? Like they had.
Well, for some reason, they do mention specifically that this person who's going to be able to do this will have to be a boy. And so we don't ever get the breakdown of the specifics on why that is, but we just know that for some reason that has to be a male. And they think they've kind of identified exactly, the traits they need. And then now they're just delaying for whatever plans they're putting into place.
Now, I might be a little intermediate again, but most females can take a concentrated dose of the spice and not go mad. However, the males fail at this certain particular test that the Bene Gesserit has created.
Is this
And-
every time, or the males more often fail?
No. So there's a specific test which you encounter at the very beginning of Dune that they give to Paul, who will be the main character of the movie and is the main character of the first book. And it's really just a test of self-control and doesn't really pertain to the spice. Now, later on, we will see that it's not spice. It's I think it's like gastric liquid from the worms or something like that. And only women can survive exposure to it. But even then, most of them go mad. And it has a very concentrated effect of the spice, giving them ability to see even farther into the future than the spice.
And it is so strange the way that they throw it at Paul in the beginning of this book. It's that he isn't warned. He isn't like when you're going through school, it's like, hey, you're gonna take this test. Get ready for it. I'm gonna teach you to get ready for this test, and then one day it's gonna happen, and no one has a warning to it.
So it's like the worst pop quiz in Dune history.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you fail, they kill you. So
Right. Death is failure.
Yeah.
Like that's what these tests are. Yes, it is the worst pop quiz.
Because you don't even know that part till the end. Oh, no, it's fine. Just put your head on this block.
So they're trying to create this super being who can see far into the future, and I guess in a way just give them more control that way. If they know all of these events coming, they can plan even better to maintain their control.
And then we did briefly talk about technology advancing to the point of Terminator-esque takeover kind of situation.
Yeah, so we did
The
talk
Butlerian Jihad.
Yes, the Butler. That's literally how I spelt it. Butlerian Jihad, because
Larians.
well, no, the butt, like B-U-T
Oh.
space.
Oh, okay.
It's easier that way.
to remember those spells. But yeah, so eventually technology advances to the point that the machines are, I don't know if they're self-aware, but they're aware enough that they enslave mankind, and then it starts a war. Yeah.
So I was diving deep into the Butlerian Jihad, and in the original text, Paul has a correction in his brain to what somebody directly said, and the Butlerian Jihad is more against. He says something akin to the machines were not actually taking over people. It was that the people who controlled the thinking machines could manipulate the population. So this is almost like a church movement being like, no, we control the population. Why are you moving in and controlling the population's minds, motives, and directives? And so this war is actually between the church and basically software engineers who have taken control of a planet. Similar to the way people are angry about social media, that the social media is controlling and deciding people's decisions. Does that make sense in the slightest?
Yeah.
It's very scary because I'm actually rewatching Castlevania, and they have a church that like manipulates the mobs. Just like, this is all because of God. Kill these people the church doesn't like, and everyone will be happy. And so just picturing that on, what is this, hundreds of worlds scale, but instead of just one Catholic church, it's, you like Greek mythology or you like Judaism? Well, we own that rights to that now. So
We own the rights to
actually pray to us.
So this war between machines and mankind, as it's often phrased in their history, ends up drastically changing their technology. And so like we talked about on first episode, that in Dune, you're not going to see a lot of advanced computation, machines and different things like this, but rather people are filling these roles, and they're using genetic engineering, and they're using drugs, and they're using specialized training to really alter at least the way that people's minds functions in a way that they can replace these machines.
Right. There's genetic manipulation of people to become computers rather than the building of computers.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Is that catch us up to where we are now?
I think the only other notes I had was the Holtzman effect. If we want to briefly talk about that, we talked about.
Well, I'm actually going to talk about it a lot, so we'll
perfect.
I'm gonna hold off on it. Yeah. Okay. The next thing we're going to encounter in Dune is like sound is a really big deal, both with the Bene Gesserit and later on technologies they're gonna develop around that. And so I wanted to go kind of into our own history and science of what's called structural resonance and music and some other things that were happening during Herbert's life that kind of influence what he talks about here. So first we'll talk about structural resonance. So if you've ever heard of or seen this in a cartoon or even the TV show, somebody hits a really high note and then glass or crystal will shatter in response to that. Now crystal will actually do that, but glass rarely does.
Right, because crystal is much more like solid structure. And
no, it's uniform is what it is. And so what happens is this is caused by structural resonance. When a certain sound hits the right frequency, it will then produce those kind of vibrations in physical material, like when you hit a tuning fork, right? Well, crystal is so uniform in its construction that so like if you hit the right frequency for a piece of glass, it's usually not going to be the same for that entire piece of glass, just a few very small points in it. Whereas because of the uniform nature of crystal, the entire crystal can all have the exact same structure, so the exact same frequency will impact the entire crystal.
And crystal is more fragile, right?
Not necessarily. It just, because it has that uniform design, it will all resound to that same frequency.
Okay.
Right. So there's an ohms scale, and crystal is much harder than glass. And ohms is
the rock scale, the
so
you
hardness.
Got, what is it, tack or talc at like number 1, and then diamond at number 9.
No, diamond's 10, and there is.
Oh, I thought it went up to 9. My bad.
No, you're fine.
But yeah, and so structural resonance is this idea that physical structures, if hit with the right frequency, can you can essentially crumble, fall apart, right? And so there's a very famous case of structural resonance. Eli, you had something?
Oh, I was just gonna be like, right, the physics of this is sound is not a quite an ethereal thing, but something that affects physics, and the reason you hear it is because it's a physical thing that is usually considered a wave that tickles little tiny hairs in your ear, and that is why you hear it. And it has the ability to do amazing things.
Yeah.
Which harmonics is not a word we've said yet. That's usually what it's referred to in Dune, right?
Yeah, and we'll get there. So first thing, I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a video of structural resonance tearing a bridge to pieces. So I'm going to share. So take a look at this if you're not familiar.
All right. We should probably tell people how they could find this.
Okay, so we're going to post it on the Facebook.
Okay, we can post it on the Facebook. Yeah, and so you can check this out, Aaron, if you've never seen this. But this is kind of slow-mo, but I want you to watch the bridge as it's moving back and forth here. That is solid concrete, cement, asphalt, all of it.
And this is because
no, that's rebar concrete. That's why it flexes.
Yeah, that's why it flexes. Yeah, but you can see it's going up and down, almost like somebody's wiggling like a water slide.
What is causing this?
So it started by wind. Wind is what starts it, but eventually what happens is it triggers structural resonance throughout the bridge, and then it just begins to vibrate more and more violently, almost like a piece of crystal until it tears itself to pieces.
And this is the Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapse. If you don't want to go check it out on our Facebook, but we'll leave it up there as well.
So,
jeez.
So maybe my imagination's running away with me, but it must have found a frequency that was halfway between the two tuning forks that are the major structures of holding the bridge up.
Yeah.
Much like the Golden Gate Bridge, and somewhere between that concrete and rebar. And it is holding this frequency that makes them all perfectly jiggle together rather than randomly jiggling together
and canceling each other out.
It's a structure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm gonna go on a theory here.
Magnets. Okay.
My theory is that it's tuning with the concrete, not the rebar, and the rebar is just going with it because most of that is concrete. The rebar just reinforces it. So the rebar is simply just holding it as best as it can, and that's why it wiggles again.
But yeah, so I wanted to talk about just the nature of sound, particularly when it comes to structural resonance, and how we, you can see it break and shatter crystal, and we can see it tear a bridge to pieces, like a full-on concrete bridge. And to understand that, because when you encounter harmonics in Dune, like the first time I saw this, I was like, what? No.
You're like,
but
no.
if you're familiar with structural resonance and you understand that, then harmonics
starts with like a robot fight.
Harmonics starts to make more sense. So Eli, do you want to talk a little bit about harmonics in Dune?
So it starts out as this like little robot fight. Now, it's not really a robot. There's a guy like pulling levers, like kind of remote control. So, it doesn't break the rules of thinking machines, but it's a trial that Paul Atreides, main character in the movie coming up, it is another one of these do or die tests that they throw at him, but he's familiar with this one. And they give him a technological device, and it's not only just like a gun with a trigger. It's also connected to his voice, and he can go, "Oi!" And there's a certain harmonic it creates, and he shoots it out of his gun, and it'll destroy the different structures because they've purposely mounted different materials on this robot that's being manipulated by another person to destroy each and every one of its arms. And
right, so back up. So there's two robots fighting each other.
No, there is Paul Atreides, the Duke's son.
Yeah.
Who, if he fails this test, he dies.
So he's controlling a robot.
No, he's fighting a robot.
He's fighting a robot. Human versus robot. That's what you got.
Oh, okay.
But
I understand.
the robot's remotely controlled.
Okay. The robot is remotely controlled, and so the guy has to use his voice to break the robot.
So what it is House Atreides, which in we talked about, they have a feudal system, right? So this is the noble house of Atreides, and we've talked about Paul, who is the main character of the first book and for the movie that will be coming out.
A Duke's son.
Yeah, so he's Paul Atreides. So House Atreides has been developing a new weapon based on harmonics, or essentially they're creating something that can take the power of structural resonance and alter it into a powerful weapon.
And the ammo is basically his voice.
Yes.
Okay, I understand. Okay. Let's take a break here because we went a little bit over time. I got excited and got distracted. This is on you guys for being interesting.
So we're talking about harmonics in Dune and how it's kind of built off of this idea of structural resonance, how sound can cause crystal to vibrate and eventually shatter. And so within Dune, Herbert has taken this and said, what if we could take that power and weaponize it? And so within the books, House Atreides is developing a secret weapon called harmonics, which is the weaponization of structural resonance. And
so, I'm sure I'm doing another intermediate question, but this is a new weapon they have created. This is not popular amongst the galaxy. They are the ones who have this technology and have developed it. and the other houses or people that would be fighting against do not have this technology at this time.
Right. And this is exactly what I was going to go into. No one else has this. This is very secret. They've been developing it, but pieces of it have leaked out to the Emperor and to House Harkonnen. And this is the very reason that House Atreides will be given control of the planet of Dune, is because they are developing this secret weapon.
Which would be akin to developing nuclear weapons during World War II.
Yes. Yeah, this is akin to developing nuclear weapons in World War II. And I'm going to explain why, because Aaron mentioned the Holtzman effect. So we'll talk about, we already talked about the first and third of the Holtzman effect, right? So Holtzman developed 3 key pieces of science and technology that completely alter the world of Dune.
Pop quiz. Aaron, answer slowly. What are the 3 Holtzman effects?
All right.
So we'll give a quick pause. Go ahead and read your notes. Listeners, what are the 3 Holtzman effects?
All I got is a human brain transferred into a machine.
Okay.
Fail.
you die. Okay, so there are 3 Holtzman effects. The first one is what allows for instant communication across any distance. So this is what connects communication, information of all of humanity across the universe, right? This first Holtzman effect.
Information that does not experience relativity, because trying to communicate to somebody who is light years away, if not billions of light years away, there is a relativity effect for how long. The fastest thing we know of is light speed, right? And so instant communication is what would unify an intergalactic civilization. Whereas you wouldn't be able to manage that because of the distance.
Yeah. The third Holtzman effect is the ability to fold space. So now all the distance of space can be traveled instantly, right? Instead of 2 years to Mars, we could be there in 5 minutes. And instead of, 40 billion light years to, whatever planet, again, 10 minutes, right? Folding space. So this is the third Holtzman effect. So these 2 effects are what unify the empire of the humans into one, and why you have only one emperor and can, because everything is connected.
Right. And there is a period where they had a dark age where they failed to do this, and they had thousands of emperors because...
Yeah, we talked about that briefly.
Yeah, we talked about that in the first one. So the second Holtzman effect is what relates to harmonics. So the second Holtzman effect is essentially a kind of force field, but it doesn't block everything. It is only anything moving over a certain speed will be blocked by this energy field. So if somebody fires a gun at you, then it will stop that bullet. But if you go to shake somebody's hand, you can shake hands because you're not moving past that speed limit. And this completely changes warfare and combat because, standard projectiles...
High velocity projectiles are no longer so effective.
Yeah, like even if you swung a sword at somebody really fast, it would still be blocked by the shield. And so what you see is people trying to get close enough to each other and then moving very slowly with usually some kind of piercing weapon that's often poisoned to get inside that shield because they can't exceed that velocity barrier, right? Otherwise, the shield will block it.
How fast do you guys know, kind of?
Well, it's never, the specifics are never given to us, but, like I said, even a fast swung weapon, melee weapon, would not break the shield. So you've got to go in very slowly.
And then another nerd question for you, just to hurt your brains. If the person is moving quickly towards a sword, would the shield still slow it down? So, okay.
Yeah. So they have this big philosophy behind the knife, right? And I wondered why a knife, not a sword. And the knife is such a small object. It can be turned quick to slow very easily and still achieve its locational goal, if you will.
Also, isn't it really easy to hide?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Easier to conceal, but also easier to control the velocity, because again, you can't have it. And if you're moving something that slowly, a big heavy sword would be hard to maintain that slow, gradual press in, whereas a knife is not going to exhaust your muscles.
Was that X-Men Origins where they had Magneto fight the guy that could control kinetic energy? So if you threw something quickly at him, he just absorb it. So Magneto just Xavier stops his mind, so he can't move, and Magneto just slowly pushes a coin through his brain.
Oh yeah,
you guys remember that? Is that kind of what we're looking for?
I guess so.
Bishop. I can't remember who it was.
The actor looked kind of like Kevin Bacon, honestly.
Yeah, so this shield completely changes combat and warfare across Dune, because now essentially any kind of infantry or hand-to-hand, any kind of combat no longer works, because these shields basically stop any kind of projectile that way. And as far as energy weapons, a laser hitting one of these Holtzman shields will cause an atomic explosion. So those don't work either, because you'll wipe each other out. So,
really?
Yeah, so the energy weapons are out. Projectile weapons are out. And so essentially, most warfare is now hand-to-hand combat, where you've got to get in close and then really slow with those knives, right? That's what warfare has now come down to.
But okay. Another intermediate question. Is this shield for House Atreides being developed during this time?
Everyone's got this shield by now. Everybody.
Okay. This is.
Yeah. But I'm guessing the weapon from House Atreides is going to do something weird.
But from the leaked reports, the Harmonics of House Atreides will destroy the Holtzman shield without triggering these atomic explosions. It is the new weapon that will completely transform warfare.
It's just propaganda.
That's just propaganda. So that is where, we build off of Herbert's interest in structural resonance all the way into, how this Dune world looks so strange. It's like they're far in the future, but nobody's using guns or lasers, and they're all fighting hand to hand, and so you have this very strange future to us because of how he has built on these technologies and I guess eliminated the function of others.
So question, so this shield, does everyone just have one around their body?
So it's just usually like something on their belt, and then you just activate it.
Okay, so it's just like a mandatory accessory, much like a phone or something.
So, well, you'll see the armies will all the soldiers will be carrying, these shields, but I don't think you'd see everyday civilians in everyday life wearing this kind of shield. But the characters we follow are nobility and, high leadership. And so they tend to always have one to protect against assassinations.
Okay.
Right. If somebody had a weapon on, like someone's got a pistol on their belt, I think it'd be akin to that, kind of showing like, I am ready for combat right now, or, I don't feel safe enough. I'm not in my, bathrobe relaxing. I'm here. I'm present.
It's uncommon, not rare.
Yeah. And before we end this, harmonics is a wonderful word to Google. There are people who have created harmonic machines where they make salt and water dance. And when I say dance, you'll know once you go and check out those videos. But this is not too sci-fi of an idea. All of this is fully realized, and there are many examples.
You're just saying this is more of a sci idea, not a sci-fi idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we have any more time for the next piece?
We have quite a bit of time. We got bit.
Okay. So I do want to dip into the feudal system, mostly because for a lot of us, it is so far in the past, it's not a governmental system we're familiar with. So we talked about how there's an emperor And, this is the Duke's son and future Duke of House Atreides, which is Paul. And so,
what's a duke to a baron to an emperor?
Right.
Yeah.
So essentially, these used to be terms that kind of determined what you would be governing. Like a barony would be governed by a baron, whereas, a duchy would be ruled by a duke. And so to kind of equate that to where we live now, a barony would be close to like a city and maybe some outlining territory a little bit, so like a mayor, whereas a duchy would be more like
a farmland, like a city that has farmland. Is that
farmland? Yeah, whereas a duchy would have a couple cities in it, so more like a state would be like a duchy, but
or a county.
Yeah, so we get
duchy county.
We have the Baron Harkonnen, who is in charge of Dune, and then he is removed from that position, and the Duke, Leto Atreides, is put in charge. So by the time we get to Dune, these titles are no longer connected to what they're governing, right? Now, the reason behind a feudal governing system is that, like in a bureaucracy, right, you have people tested, and they pass exams or they get certifications, right? They're appointed based on their abilities in a bureaucracy. Whereas in a feudal system, you are appointed based on your loyalty, right? How loyal does the person at the top feel you are? And then you are appointed based on what they believe your degree of loyalty to be. And then you pass on that position of power through your bloodline, right? A legacy passing of that power and position.
So once you can produce a loyalty to somebody in power, they give you more power.
Right.
And then we just trust that your children will follow you and you will teach them this loyalty.
Wait, I know that when we were talking about Baal and Giuseppe and whatever those three gods were, Baldur's Gate.
It wasn't Giuseppe, but yeah.
That's a weird name. We talked about there was like a godly MLM where they had to go get people. This is literally a political MLM. Like literally, if you love me enough and get me like a lot of people to follow me around, then I will say good things about you, and then you can have people follow you around, and you don't have to work anymore.
MLM, multi-level marketing.
Yeah, exactly. It's literally a political.
Well, so what it builds off of essentially is like with old monarchies, what it was is the statement was the king owns everything. And then he lets you control little bits and pieces depending on how loyal he thinks you are. Right. And so.
Right. If you seem like you don't really trust him, he's like, I'm giving you a very low position and I'm just going to let you have your head until I take it.
You could be a janitor of all of sewage.
So, yeah, well, and what it was is that, a lot of time, right, when you were given charge of an area, the military in that area was loyal to whatever baron or duke was in charge. And because the king needed that military and feared rebellion, he had to make sure he trusted you, right? It was far more important to the king that you would not turn on him than you were good at your job in ruling that territory, right? His key priority was you're loyal because you have a piece of military under your control.
That sounds super healthy. I bet the civilians love living in that environment.
But yeah, and so that's the feudal system that then is at place in Dune, right?
Okay. So just to recap, we talked about kind of just Dune. It is hundreds of planets. It is very futuristic, but they don't use projectile weapons due to these shields that most of the military...
Hold up. I've seen the 80s version of this. There's a guy who shoots a screw at somebody and takes them out.
So I mean, there are specialized like weapons that will like detect the Holtzman shield and then slow to go in slowly.
Okay. So that's what that was.
That's how we're going to define it, yeah. And then there's also, we did talk a lot about Bene Gesserit's, the one true religion, and then spice was the drug of choice, much like skooma in Skyrim, except this one gives magical powers.
Should really say Soma. It's such a more popular phrase, man.
Skooma. Now I'm going to say Skooma just to bother you.
All right.
So tell me things. So is that basically everything? Is that going to give us a good introduction into the world of Dune? Is there anything else that we need to understand?
Yes. There's more we have to understand. So another thing is, so talking Darwinism and moving up into the point of evolution where Herbert is, where he would have taken his science class, what they would talk about was a lot of the survival of the fittest theory. And this idea that, only the strongest survive, and then in turn they produce a more, I guess, a stronger generation in the next generation, and on and on. And so Herbert brings this idea into Dune, in this idea that certain planets are incredibly hard on the populations that live there. And so most of the Imperial army then comes from a planet called Sarkov. And so these are the Sarkov soldiers, and they are known as the toughest fighters in all of the universe because they come from this incredibly challenging environment, and they live there for thousands of years, ever, building on the survival of the fittest theory to produce these incredibly powerful and effective soldiers. Well, the other planet that is equal, or if not even more difficult to live on, is Dune. And while the royal family and stuff, they have all kinds of stuff brought in so they can live there, and different things like that. The people running the spice mines, they don't encounter the raw challenges of living on Dune itself.
Right. They have spaceships, they have vehicles, they have protective environments.
They've got pest control.
So Dune is a desert planet, completely, right? It's just all desert everywhere except for, rocky spots here and there. And at one point, Paul and his mother are out to, go visit one of the spice mines, and their ship is brought down. And in it, they've got maybe 4 liters of water they brought with them for the day. And when the natives of Dune see this, they ask him, what was all this wealth intended for? Right? Because for them, it's just ridiculous that you'd have that much extra water. That is an obscene amount of wealth for them. And so for the people who aren't really living on Dune in the harsh environment, but just these very curated homes and cities that are protected, they don't really live on Dune, right? They have brought their homeworld with them. And they,
Right. They don't survive off the land. They survive off the intergalactic empire.
Yeah. They survive off all the trade and the import.
They're still spacemen in an environment where they almost need their own spacesuits, not a suit that you would wear on the planet referred to as a still suit.
Yeah. So you have this idea of the survival of the fittest producing these, kind of super soldiers, not through, heavy genetic engineering like some of the other things, but just through environmental engineering of the people. Well, there is only one planet harder to live on than Sarkov, and that is Dune. And there are people who are not connected to the royal family or the empire who live there, and these are the Fremen. And this idea of, how these environments shape these people will then come into conflict within the story of Dune, as this idea of the survival of the fittest is then pitted against itself.
Okay. All right. So that's as simple, as easy as we can get it in 2 episodes, Dune, and kind of what to expect, minus the massive spoilers from Eli, because he wants to ruin everyone's hope and happiness. What are we going to be talking about next for Dune? We're going to be diving in a little bit deeper and talking about specific things, right?
Okay, so we do want to talk about the guilds. So,
okay.
The 3 major powerhouses of Dune coming together to form one union, which then allows them to kind of control everything effectively, right? You've got mankind that has spread the entire universe. How do you rule that? Right, effectively. So we talk about the union of three organizations that make that possible. And then, of course, we will talk in detail about melange, which is the name of the spice that they consume.
Spice melange.
And then, of course, Eli wants to do a deep dive into the Butlerian Jihad and really explore that. So my guess, so there may even be points of contradiction with Dune, and I just want to address that real quick. So Frank Herbert wrote the Dune series, and out of the Dune series, we get the Dune Encyclopedia, which is, the kind of detailed and a little bit more backstory on everything. And then Frank Herbert's son, Brian, went on to write what's called the expanded Dune universe, which is prequels and stuff that comes after. And some of the stuff that he chose to include in those books contradicts the Dune Encyclopedia. So occasionally there are slightly differing perspective on these events. But as we've talked about in D&D, sometimes this is a good thing because our own history plays out that way, right? There is disagreement on certain events in history depending on which perspective you take.
Well, even when we were talking about The Witcher, we specifically talked about how there's no one true map and everything's
so that's so the one. There's no one true map of The Witcher is crazy. Although I do think that most people will take the version they created for the TV show and kind of make that the official version because I think it'll quickly become the most widely known. Yes, but
that is fair.
But while you still can, definitely Google those Witcher maps and see the differences that have come out. Because like I said, the author never made a map, and so everything everybody created was just based on conversations in the books.
Right. And our friends at City of Town, I think they kind of thrive on this kind of retcon that happens, right? Like there is no definitive this or that. There's just a vague world, and that's how they play.
Go check them out if you haven't, and thanks for joining us in Dune.
Yeah. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. We have mentioned in the past that if you go to the Patreon page, we have collections of all the different worlds and pieces of lore we have covered. For example, if you want everything we have ever done about Baldur's Gate, from the invention of D&D to Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, Dark Alliance, all of that, you can find individual collections for all of those, or just one big collection containing all of Baldur's Gate or all of D&D. So everything we have covered, Eberron, Marvel, DC, Alien, Zooniverse, Cyberpunk, Dune, and more. We have collections for each of those worlds. And I do want to mention that on the Patreon, the only thing behind the subscription is the Treasure Room content. Anything that has been released in the podcast for free is still free there. It is just a better organization of the information that the podcast app doesn't let us do. They are just a big list, and you just got to type in your search words. On the Patreon, there are tags for everything. You got fantasy, D&D, creature features, Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, Dark Alliance, all of that. Just an individual tag for those episodes. And as I said, we do have collections just to make this as easy as possible to find what you're looking for. We have learned in the past that a lot of people who listen to The Flore, they're interested in one or two of the worlds, and they may check out one or two of the episodes when we switch worlds, but they're really just mostly interested in that. So we just want to consolidate everything you're looking for to make it just as easy as possible to access. So check that out just to make your life easier. And we are working at making sure you can download any of the free episodes there. So even if you're going to lose Wi-Fi or connection, you can get the episodes you want before that happens, or just not burn your data while you're traveling to and from work or whatever else is you do while you listen. And thank you. I hope you continue to enjoy the show.